Welcome to the Takeaway Podcast, where we cover the NBA and the NFL every single Wednesday, bringing you the most up-to-date news across both leagues, for both sports nerds and newcomers alike. I am your host, Jihan Lee, and today we will be covering the takeaways from Week 4, the truth about the Tua injury, and the status of new head coaches, and much, much more. Before we get into the bulk of our discussion, I'm just going to go over a couple of takeaways that I had after watching, throughout Week 4, and we're just going to be quickly going over just a takeaway from each of the games. Some of them we will skip over because we'll just have a longer discussion about them later on in the episode. But without much further ado, the first game that everyone was able to watch was the Saints and Vikings going up against one another, with the Vikings winning 28-25. And I think the biggest takeaway that you can come out of this game is Justin Jefferson. If he is doing his thing, if he can do it on a consistent basis, he can be the number one receiver in the league, which is what he wanted to do before the start of the season. He came out of this game with 10 receptions for 147 yards. He had been struggling over the past couple of weeks, and for him to come out this game against a secondary that's it's not like the bottom of the barrel, a defense that's really good, that has the talent across the front seven and the secondary, and for him to put up 147 yards is amazing for him and for us viewers as well. The next game that we're going to be talking about is none other than the Lions and the Seahawks game, which ended in 48-45. As a Seahawks fan myself, I have to say Geno Smith is that guy. Obviously, he's not to the talent level of what Russell Wilson is, and some people are crazy to say that Geno Smith is better than Russell Wilson, which is absolutely preposterous to say. But Geno Smith had a really, really good game, across, not only in the air, but also on the ground as well. And Rashad Penny is really, really coming into his own now. Obviously, we saw him at the end of last season really pick it up. But now that he's come back and really getting the carries that he needs to, do his thing on the ground, he finished the game with 17 carries, 151 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I really, really look forward to Rashad Penny continuing this trend throughout the rest of the season. And we did get to see Kenneth Walker get 8 carries for 29 yards. Obviously not a bunch, but we're seeing him get a couple carries on the ground as well. Of course, there was also DK Metcalf, 7 receptions and 149 yards as well. And he did take a break in the middle of the game to go use the restroom as well. So for any of you guys, who saw that, I assume that you guys got a huge laugh out of that as well. Now, the next game we're going to be talking about is none other than the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is a really interesting game to talk about. And the reason why is because Kenny Pickett came into the game after the first half, and he had 13 throws, 10 of them completed for 120 yards, and it's 3 interceptions, but I don't count the last one. So 120 yards and 2 interceptions, realistically, taking away the Hail Mary interception at the very end. And he made some really, really good throws throughout the game, and some, not so much. But I definitely think that Kenny Pickett can come into potentially even next week as the starter, and see him progress from the start all the way to the end as a full starter. And it looks like he has a really good connection with the other rookie, George Pickens. He had some 2 really good throws to Pickens that really, really amazed me personally. So as a Pittsburgh fan, I think you can really look forward to what Kenny Pickett can do throughout the season as potentially the starting quarterback starting next week. The next game we're going to be talking about is going to be none other than the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears. And I want to go a little bit more in depth about this game when we talk about the head coaches, but Saquon Barkley is back. I think that's the biggest takeaway that you can take from this game. He had 31 carries, which is a lot of carries for 146 yards, but he's able to take that load. He's able to run the ball. He had a crazy play because he had I believe it was a screen pass that he caught, almost got tackled. He caught it on the right side of the field, caught it, spun out, ran all the way to the left side of the field. It was able to get the first down and a couple more yards as well, which was absolutely crazy. Saquon Barkley is back from his injury, and he's my pick for comeback player of the year. And I really, really hope that he stays healthy and we get to enjoy his, I guess, his play throughout this season. The next game we're going to be talking about is the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts. And the Titans win this game 24-17. And the takeaway I think you can come out of this game with is Derrick Henry is a lot. I believe that he's fully healthy. He came out of this game ended this game with 22 carries for 114 yards and a touchdown. And this team goes as Derrick Henry goes. We knew that. At least I knew that going into the season, but really, like, without Derrick Henry, there really isn't much of an offense. To give you an idea, Ryan Tannehill threw 17 out of 21 for only 137 yards, but did throw 2 touchdowns. The longest yardage for any pass catcher for the Titans was 3 receptions for 38 yards, and that was a Okonkwo, and he did get a touchdown as well. But the passing game for the Titans is not obviously their strong suit, and they kind of go as Derrick Henry goes. So it's gonna be hard to. I think for them, it's really evident how important AJ Brown was to their passing offense, and obviously we can see how vital he is for the Philadelphia's offense, as he has an amazing connection with Jalen Hurts. The next game we're going to be talking about is the Los Angeles Chargers and the Houston Texans. I think this is really the biggest concern that I had coming into this week, especially was the health of Justin Herbert. He came out of this game, finished it with 27 out of 39 for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he looks to be really healthy, and that's really, really nice to see that. I mistakenly said when we were talking about Justin Herbert's injury about that he had a rib fracture. It wasn't that his ribs were fractured, it was the rib cartilage that was fractured, which is a little bit different than the actual ribs being fractured. So the recovery time for the rib cartilage being fractured is a bit different than the actual ribs being fractured. So that's really, really good to see from Herbert, and just to see him be healthy. We don't want to. I mean, personally, I don't want to lose these young quarterbacks, young players to like a serious injury that could potentially derail their season or their career potentially, which we will get into later on the episode. But next, we're going to be talking about the Atlanta Falcons and the Cleveland Browns. And the Falcons win this game 23-20. This game was primarily found on the ground. And although Nick Chubb came away with 19 carries, 118 yards, it was the Falcons who were able to come away with this win. And it was just a handful of just their backs and timely plays, from their offense that they were able to come away with this win. Very close game, obviously. They were able to make a huge comeback, scoring 13 points in that fourth quarter after not scoring for the past two. And so it was, I guess, encouraging to see, but it's going to be the biggest takeaway that I can say is both of these teams need help. It's really hard for both teams to really find consistent, consistency from their team. But it was really an entertaining game. It wasn't a game that I spent a lot of time watching, but definitely a game that was close, so entertaining to watch. The next game is the Cowboys against the Washington Commanders, and somehow the Cowboys were able to win this 25-10, and they are standing at 3-1. And the takeaway: Cooper Rush is that guy. He came away with this game 15 of 27 with 223 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked just really comfortable in this offense. He has won over that locker room. He just has the guys motivated, just ready to play each and every single game. And they just look poised and ready to play. And it begs the question on whether you want to bring Dak Prescott in when Cooper Rush is playing this well and they're able to get these wins. So the biggest discussion now is, who do you play as a starter now, Dak Prescott or Cooper Rush, which sounds like a weird question to ask, but with Cooper Rush playing this well, I think you do have to ask that question. The next game we're going to be talking about is the Eagles and the Jaguars, as the Eagles came away with a win, and they're the only team left that is undefeated. They're 4-0, and they won this game 29-21. And I think the biggest takeaway that you can come out of this game with is Philadelphia is that team. They were down with it wasn't even like a bad turnover by Jalen Hurts. He threw the ball in a tight window. It bounced off, with the game being rainy, and they were able to get a pick six. And then the Jaguars were able to score on their drive, putting it up 14-0. And they were just so calm, so collected. They were able to come back from that 2-touchdown deficit, put up 20 in the second quarter, and then they were able to close out that game with 9 points in the fourth quarter to get them an 8-point win. And they just the confidence that Jalen Hurts has, despite having that pick in the first quarter for a pick six, it just shows how much I think he has matured as a quarterback and as a leader to come back from that kind of deficit and will his team to a win. I think this team is for real. They definitely are going to be a playoff team, and I think potentially the number one seed in the NFC. So if you aren't aware of how good the Philadelphia Eagles are, please go watch them. Please take a time out of your day to go watch their game. They're really good. They're just fun to watch and potentially going to make some really big noise in this year's postseason. The next game we're going to be talking about is the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals, as the Cardinals come away with a 26-16 win. And the biggest takeaway that I think you can come out of this game with is it's they just need more help on that offensive end, defensively as well. But they had to come back from a significant deficit. I mean, they were able to score 16 points in that fourth quarter, but I think it's evident to see the kind of gravity that Hopkins he brings, and just allow what kind of playmaker he is for Murray, the connection that they have. They just need playmakers on that offensive end and on that defensive end as well, to really uh, just help them, not have to play from behind all the time and not have these close games. Because against the Carolina Panthers, who, to be completely honest, aren't that great of a team, you know, it was a lot. It was much. It was a much closer game than the scoreboard indicates at the very end of the game. But we'll really get to see, uh, you know, Hopkins come, and the help that he brings once he returns. I believe in week 7. The next game we're going to be talking about is the Raiders getting their first win of the season against the Denver Broncos in a 32-23 win. Josh Jacobs went absolutely crazy. 28 carries, for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Devontae Adams, 9 receptions for 101. But I think, despite them winning this game, I think it does beg the question on, whether, although we will get into depth about it a little later, is for both of these teams, in fact, the coach that they did hire, if that coach is right for them. I don't know if it is, if it's just me. I believe a lot of you guys at home agree with this testament. But I didn't expect the Raiders to go 0-3 in their first 3 games. And the Broncos have their own struggles as well. But I definitely think that both of these teams need their coaches to step up, offensively, defensively, just as leaders as a whole, and just have them be focused on even just the little things that are going on in the game to help them focus on getting that W in the win and loss column. The final game that we'll do the takeaway on, and at least for this section, is going to be the Green Bay Packers against the New England Patriots, who the Packers came away with this game with a 27-24 win in overtime. Aaron Rodgers threw for 35, 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Aaron Jones had 16 carries for 110 yards. Alan Lazard, 6 receptions for 116 yards. Now, the Patriots had Bailey Zappi, Bailey Z. We'll just call him Bailey Z at quarterback, who threw only 15 times for 99 yards and a touchdown. And it was a lot of their just their defense, honestly, that really made plays that were able to keep them in the game. And a lot of it was just, it was just hard for, I guess it's evidence to see that the Patriots aren't as good as we think that, or at least I thought that they were going to be. Despite them making the playoffs last season, it's just they're not there. They need more playmakers on offense, especially at the receiver position, at tight end. Just, I think defensively they are a lot better than they are on their offense, but they just need help. But the Packers, despite losing Devontae Adams, I think they are in a good spot. I don't see them as championship contenders, but I do think that they can make the postseason, potentially make some noise in the postseason as well. And potentially this might be what Aaron Rodgers needs, just to have people that he can throw to instead of having to, I guess, focus on throwing to a specific player exclusively, in which he had an Adams, which I don't think that leads to like a championship level team. I think you do need that number one guy, but Aaron Rodgers is making what he is given work, at least for the moment. The final game, I think I wanted to talk about more in depth, but I think we can just make just a quick takeaway on is the San Francisco 49ers beating the Los Angeles Rams convincingly with a 24-9 win. And oh my goodness, Deebo Samuel is crazy. 6 receptions for 15 yards and a touchdown. I believe he had a 53-yard catch and run for a touchdown. And that was just impressive to see. But the 49ers defense is keeping them in games. I love Talanoa Hufanga. He's I just love him at the safety position and just how he works in that defense. Obviously, that front, we had Samson Ebukam with 2 sacks, Nick Bosa with 2 sacks, Hassan Ridgeway with a sack, Charles Menahe with a sack, and you had Demondio Modre. I'm not. Lenore, number 38, he also had a sack as well. But it's just they have playmakers on that defensive end. And to be completely honest, they do kind of have the Rams number in the regular season. But Cooper Kupp still did his thing, 14 receptions for 122 yards. But outside of Kupp and I guess you could say Higbee at tight end, but Kupp really doesn't have any help. Allen Robinson had 2 receptions for 7 yards. So it's just tough to see this offense not have a secondary playmaker outside of Kupp. Now, we're going to get into potential, or I believe the biggest news that has come out of week 4. And unfortunately, it isn't good news. And that is the Tua Tangavailoa injury. Now, if you aren't aware, Tua Tangavailoa, in week 3, when he was playing against the Buffalo Bills, towards the end of the second quarter, after throwing he was hit kind of late. I believe it was Matt Milano, but he was hit a bit late. He stumbled back. His head kind of whipped back and hit the turf. And he got up. He looked okay, but then he stumbled a bit as he was walking to the huddle. And watching that without, diagnosing anything myself, it just looked as if he hit his head, that it was potentially a concussion, that he potentially would have been pulled. He should have been pulled out of the game, but he came into the game later, and they were able to come away with the win. Now, seeing that kind of, let's say Tua was okay during that time, although I may not agree with it. If he says he wants to go in, even then, I don't think you should put him in, but he went in and they were able to win. But then you have a game on Thursday, 4 days later, and this time against the Cincinnati Bengals. He's in the pocket, he drops back for a throw, and he is sacked. But as he is sacked, he's kind of whipped backwards, and his head slams into the turf. And because of that, he's coming out with his fingers kind of locked in place like this. And it's just devastating to see negligence from the Miami Dolphins organization to have their young quarterback being thrown in to a game 4 days after he got his head hit on Sunday, that they attributed to him stumbling as ankle and back injuries, which it's just, you have to protect. There are rules in place that protects the quarterback during the games. But if the organization is just negligent and they decide to throw in their quarterback with a potential concussion 4 days later into a game, and during that game, he hits his head and comes out with a concussion, it's just frustrating to see as a fan. You don't want to see any player get hurt like this. Even if it's part of a team, no one is hoping for, not even just exclusively for the NFL, just anybody get hurt. No one is looking for people to get hurt. And for you to put your quarterback in a situation that is potentially career-ending for them, that is something that I think needs to be taken into account. And I think as fans, we need to, consider and say, like, we can't look at players sitting out after something like that and be like, oh, that's what do you like? You need to play, you need to win, because yes, although athletes, it's their job to play the sport that they are given. If you have a potential concussion, you should not play. Even if it's not like a confirmed concussion, if you have a head trauma like that, you should not be playing 4 days after you get that. So there are a couple updates that have come from this injury. Obviously, after the game, he was cleared for him to fly back with the team to Miami. So hopefully, he is fine. Hopefully, he'll have a swift recovery, and my condolences go out to him and his family, and just for him to just come back healthy, better, stronger than before. But news has come out that the doctor that initially, I believe it is the doctor that initially diagnosed him for, I believe, the back and the ankle injuries, not for that diagnosis specifically, but because of his actions during investigation afterwards, he was fired from his position, and it was a neuroscientist. And so it's hard to say. The NFL is not saying that the back injury and the ankle injury diagnosis is the reason why they fired this man. But there is a potential correlation to that, or it's just that they don't want someone like that at the position in the future. Whatever the case may be, I do think that it was a right decision, whether for that diagnosis or not, for someone to see that and to say that they're cleared to go and play for 4 games afterward. I think it is something that the NFL should be protecting. And the biggest thing is the concussion protocol itself, that needs to be changed. And news has come out that they have changed it so that gross motor function, I believe is what it's called, that is now in the concussion protocol as well. So here we go. So Tangavailoa must proceed through a 5-step process before returning to the field, and this is what it looks like, paraphrasing from the return to play portion of the protocol. So there are 5 total phases, and the first one is rest, then limiting or avoiding physical cognitive activity if they aggravate symptoms, introduction of limited stretching and balancing work, and moving to light aerobic exercise. Phase 2 is gradual progress toward cardiovascular exercise, dynamic stretching, and more balanced work. Neurocognitive and balance testing can be administered if the results are interpreted as back to baseline, pre-concussion levels, and phase 2 is satisfied. Phase 3 is increased cardio exercise to mimic sport-specific activity along with supervised strength training. The player can practice with the team during sport-specific exercise for 30 minutes or less. And phase 4, the player can advance to non-contact football activities such as throwing, catching, and running. Another round of neurocognitive and balance testing is administered to confirm results remain at baseline. And then phase 5, a club physician must clear the player for full football activity, including contact. Then an independent neurological consultant, or INC, assigned to the team by joint agreement between the NFL and the NFLPA, must concur with the team physician that the concussion has resolved at that point. The player is cleared to play in his team's next game. So the NFL and the NFLPA were the ones who fired that, the independent neurological consultant, or the INC. And so it's I guess it's just hard to see as a fan, a young player especially, uh, have a concussion like this that could have been prevented easily by just having him not play that game. And I just think it's just heartbreaking to see that after this kind of situation or circumstance has occurred, that is when we make these kind of changes. That no one has taken the initiative to look at these things ahead of time and say, hey, this is something that we potentially could have problems with in the future. This is something we should be looking out for. This is something we should be worried about. And it just no one questioned that Tua was coming into play 4 days after we saw him whip his head back into the ground. I think that does constitute some changes in the future, and it looks like the NFL has made some initiative to do so. So hopefully we will see Tua come back healthy, and I think until then it's going to be hard for me as a fan to say that they're going to be like true championship contenders. But I guess we'll get to see throughout, until Tua's return, how this team will function with Bridgewater at the helm. But once again, I do hope that Tua gets a swift return to play. And we'll move on to our next topic, which is going to be talking about the new head coaches that have been instituted to the various organizations across the league. Now, we aren't going to be talking about all of them. There are a huge handful of them that were instituted last season, but the big ones are the ones that I want to talk about, and that is the head coach for the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel, the New York Giants coach, and Ryan Daboll, and the Jaguars coach in Doug Peterson. Now I want to start off with that last one in Doug Peterson, because he was a head coach before, obviously a Super Bowl winning head coach in Philadelphia. But I did want to talk about him in this section because this is something that we, or at least a lot of people were talking about uh, for the Jaguars in their hiring for coaches during the offseason, which was that in order for Trevor Lawrence to really come to his own, that you need to hire an offensive coach, have him understand an NFL offense at this level, and for him to really come into his own and see what it is like to really function and operate at at the NFL level. And I think that he has really come into his own with Doug Peterson as head coach, and he looks just really confident, really good, and really poised in the pocket. Their team, I don't think anyone outside of that organization expected them to be looking this good this early on. I think that they could potentially make the postseason. That division is relatively weak with, the Houston Texans, the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts in that division. They could potentially come out of that as to win that division and then get a top 4 seed in the postseason. And I think that would be much needed experience for Lawrence just to get that feeling of what it's like to play in the the postseason. And it just shows that you cannot attribute a quarterback, a young quarterback's struggles early on to them exclusively. They do need to be built around. They do need to have a head coach that operates and runs a pro style offense in the NFL. And that, I'm sorry, that's a motorcycle passing by. I don't know if you can hear that, but that helps me move on to the next coach that I want to talk about, and that is none other than Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins. And they were able to build around Tua, although he is injured now. But when Tua was playing, they had a offense that was explosive, that could make plays with Jalen Waddle, with Tyreek Hill, and just Mike McDaniel has just a presence in that locker room, and he just looks like a head coach that can be successful for many, many, many years. And coming out of that Shanahan tree, I think Mike McDaniels was an amazing hire for this organization, and I think going into the future, he will be a head coach that we'll be talking about as one of the up and coming young head coaches that should be in the conversation as the best, if not one of the best, in our league. And the last one that I want to give my props to is the head coach of the New York Giants, and that is Ryan Daboll. He just coming from the Bills organization last season, and for him to come in and put this team together. Look at what they have with Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley coming back, having their rookies come in, having the pieces in place with this team that had been struggling, throughout the past seasons, and for him to come in to this situation in New York, which is, it comes with its advantages and its disadvantages, but for them to come out of week 4 with I can't believe I'm saying this, but for them to come out of week 4 with a 3-1 record is just a testament to the kind of coaching that Brian Daboll is doing in New York, and I just look forward to seeing him progress throughout the rest of the season and just see him, I guess, come into his own and just really solidify his spot in this league as a prolific head coach. Now, on the flip side of that story, I think we have to talk about Nathaniel Hackett, Josh McDaniels of the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders, respectively. Now, both of these teams went up against each other. It's just these two teams these two coaches don't look like they have a identity. They don't have the respect of their players, of their organization, and it's just their teams had expectations in place with the talent that they had and what we projected them to achieve this season, and both of them have fallen short of that. Now, we can attribute that to growing pains. We can attribute that to, first-time head coaching or coming to a new organization, that it takes time. But as we just mentioned in the other coaches that we just talked about, that isn't always the case. And that if you are a good head coach, it shouldn't take you, this long for, not necessarily for you to win, but for your team to look like they know what they're doing, and like there aren't, delay of game flags, that there aren't penalties here and penalties there that are costing you significant momentum, yardage, wins potentially. And the biggest thing is just they aren't operating their own side of the ball. Josh McDaniel was on offense. Nathaniel Hackett was also on offense. And both of these teams on offense just don't look like a well-oiled machine, that they don't look efficient, consistent. They don't have that identity that other teams have. And it's just, I don't know if we can definitively say right now that both of these coaches, aren't good. But I think it does beg the question and pose the question on, you do have to question on whether you continue with these head coaches or not. But I think, you have to give them, I think, a full season's worth to make that full conclusion. But I think they are on the hot seat coming into week 5, that you really have to be like, hey, if you guys don't do well, potentially you guys got to watch out. Like, the Broncos have a relatively easy matchup against the Colts this week. So if they don't come out and look, at the very least, competitive, that would beg concerns for me. And specifically for the Denver Broncos, a lot of people are attributing the struggles of their season to Russell Wilson. Why? Why are you guys like, why? Like, what is it that is giving you the impression that Russell Wilson is the reason why this team is struggling? Russell Wilson, for this game specifically against the Raiders, he went 17-25, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And if I can quickly pull this up, that ended him up with a QBR of, where is it? The QBR of 124.9. 124.9. And you guys are saying Russell Wilson is the problem. Russell Wilson is the reason why we're losing games. 124.9 QBR. I think you just have to say that this is attributed to coaching, and that Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett are just not on the same page as a quarterback and coaching tandem. Now, on the flip side, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, who will be going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think in this, you have to look. You can't just lose the game in the first quarter, I think. You have to look competitive. You have to look like you give at least the Chiefs a run for their money. I don't expect them to win, but you have to be able to at least look competitive in this game. Like I said, I don't expect the Las Vegas Raiders to win, but you just have to look like you're giving, the Chiefs, at least make them work for it. Don't just hand them a win on a silver platter. But I think it does show that coaching does matter in this league. You have to have a good head coach in order to operate. You can compensate for lack of talent with head coaching, but you cannot compensate lack of head coaching with talent. Head coaching matters as much as any other position on the field. If you don't have a good head coach, you will struggle in this league. I think that it's really important to get a good head coach that knows what they're doing, that has a good culture, that has a good presence in the locker room, and is able to win over his team and just help them be competitive and obviously potentially get wins in the future. Now, quickly moving on, giving a rest for some NFL talk, we have the NBA now. We had a bunch of preseason games going on, But I think I'll wait to really get into the meat of the NBA once the actual season starts. I think we might have a more dedicated episode for it next week. If you guys want to see a more dedicated NBA episode, please leave some comments in in the comment section below. But today I actually wanted to talk about two yet to be drafted players who will be drafted in next year's draft, or I guess you could say next year's draft, 2023, and that is none other than Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about these two guys is they went up against each other. Obviously, Scoot Henderson being part of the G League Ignite, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce Wembanyama's team, but they did go up against each other, and it ended in a 122 to 115 win for the G League Ignite. Now, Scoot Henderson, he ended this game. Why is it not popping up? Interesting. I believe it's not coming up right now on my screen, but he ended with 28 points and 9 assists, I believe, if I'm wrong. Hopefully I can get that sorted out as we talk about this. So he ended with 28 points and I believe 9 assists. Oh, there we go. We got it to work. Okay, so Scoot Henderson, he ended with 28 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds, as well as 2 steals. And Victor Wembanyama ended with 37 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 blocks. Now, the biggest thing that I think is the discussion now is who is the number 1 overall pick between these two. I think Scoot Henderson, after seeing this game, he is definitely making a case for the number 1 overall pick. Now, it's hard to pass up Wembanyama's skill set, his size, his length. Just you don't find a prospect like that ever. He's standing at 7'4", has skills like a guard, can pass, can shoot, can dribble, can play face up, can play back to the basket. Obviously, he doesn't need, to be a little bit stronger to really play back to the basket, but he has the tools to do all those things. And for context, he shot 7 of 11 from 3 at 7'4", and some of these were in transition, just pull up 3, catch and shoot corner 3, step back. I believe he did a step back this game. If not a step back, then at least just sizing up shot. And just defensively, he's just he's a problem on the end as well, just erasing shots. He had 2 huge blocks where Henderson tried to, I think 2 jump shots where he tried to put him over Wembanyama, just erase them. Now, on the flip side, we have someone like Scoot Henderson. Now, Scoot Henderson is a little bit different of a player compared to Wembanyama. He's a guard that I believe he is. Let me get the exact stats on his length and his size. He's 6'2". He's a 6'2" guard at only 18 years old right now. He's almost going to be 19 pretty soon. But he just has a finishing ability. He has a playmaking ability that's amazing. He plays solid defense. He can score. He can He can, shoot the mid range. He can shoot the three off the dribble. Can finish inside. He looked just super comfortable, super confident. He took on the challenge of playing against Wembanyama. He had a crazy step back three over Wembanyama. I don't know how he got that shot off, but for him to just step back at the top of the key and just sink that three was just confidence. I guess to say from the scouting perspective, because it was a question that we did have on Henderson coming into this season. Was something that we were all looking out for, was his progression in his shooting ability, and I think this game really showcased it. Although he only shot 2 of 3 from three, he had some really good mid range jump shots that he was able to put in, and although he has not solidified his spot as number one overall pick, I think it does have the case for you to really potentially have Scoot Henderson go number one overall over Wembanyama. I don't think it is a crazy prediction to say that Henderson has that chance. After this game, he is definitely making a case for himself to do so, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing what both of these guys bring to the table for any NBA team that they are able to join. I think any team would be lucky to have either of these guys on their team. Now we're going to be moving on to our second to last topic of today, and that is, I think, probably one of the most exciting games of this week, and that is none other than the Baltimore Ravens going up against the Buffalo Bills. Now, this game ended 23-20. Really, really, really close game. And for context, this game was in full hands of the Baltimore Ravens early on. In the first quarter, in fact, Josh Allen threw a pick to Marlon Humphrey that they were able to convert into a score. Then they were able to come down again and score another touchdown. They were up 14-0, then 14-3. They were able to come down and not end the first half, but put themselves in a position where they were up 17 points. They were 20-3 before Buffalo's last drive at the end of the first half, where they were able to close that gap to 10 points. Now, with what the Baltimore Ravens offense was doing in the first half, it was crazy to if you were to tell me that was the last time we were going to see the Baltimore Ravens score, I would have called you crazy. It was just this was a rainy game, so you have to take that into account. Lamar Jackson, he threw for 20 of 29, which was a really accurate game for only 144 yards, which, taking the weather into account, I think you do have to understand the yardage behind that. But he also had 11 carries for 73 yards. He had one touchdown, 2 interceptions. It was just Lamar Jackson did his thing, at least with what he had. It was just a really defensive game throughout for both teams, in fact. But Josh Allen had 19 of 36, 213 yards and a touchdown and interception. He also ran 11 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. A lot of the work was done on the ground, obviously, because of the weather with its, with the rain coming down, relatively hard. But it's just the biggest thing the reason why I wanted to talk about this game a little bit more in depth was the last play of the game for the Baltimore Ravens was they were 4th and goal. I believe it was 4th and goal. I think they were on the 3-yard line. It was either the 3-yard line or the 2-yard line. And instead of choosing to kick a field goal to put them up 23-20, and this was with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, having not scored a single point in this entire second half up until, this decision, why would you not want the 3 points? Now, I can see, that if you do score there, then it guarantees that you force overtime at the very least, unless they, get a touchdown and then go for 2. But for you to go for it, not kick the field goal, and then not get it on fourth down, and or not only not get it, but you throw an interception in the end zone that puts them in great position. Like, if you were on fourth down on the 3 or 2 yard line and you go for it and you just throw it away, then you put the Bills 4 minutes left on the clock on their own 2-3 yard line. Potentially your defense makes a play, you get the ball back, or you get or they take too long and they aren't able to get downfield, and then it goes to overtime. But for you to go for it on the Buffalo Bills 2 yard line, not kick the field goal, having not scored that entire second half, and then throw a pick in the end zone. I love the aggressiveness that the Baltimore Ravens play with, but at some point you just have to take the points and just trust your defense to make a stop. I would rather you get the 3 points and force the Bills to go all the way down to score a touchdown and lose, and trust in your defense, and then to go for it, not score, throw an interception. The Buffalo Bills gets to go all the way down and kick a field goal and win. It's just, I don't think that Coach Harbaugh is a bad coach by any means. That's just not what I'm saying. I'm not saying his decision making, his play calling is bad. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to say. But it's just the decision there to decide to not go for it, or to go for it. Sorry, not kick the field goal, and then end up turning the ball over in that situation. It's hard for me to say that the Baltimore Ravens are contenders, but it's not to the point where you say that I can say that they're pretenders either. I do think that they have a fairly good chance of making the playoffs. Obviously, their division is pretty tough. They have, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who aren't as good as before. Obviously, losing T.J. Watt to a pec injury, but you're in the same division as the Cincinnati Bengals, the Cleveland Browns. If and when they get Deshaun Watson back, will be a much better team. It's going to be a tough division to win. You'll have some matchups. Obviously, you're still in the AFC, so there's a lot of good teams. But it's just not to the point where I can say that I'm confident enough for them to make a postseason run. Just the decision to go for it there in that situation late in the game, to put you guys 3-1 on the season, I think it was just a tough, risky decision to say the least. Now, the final game and the final topic that we are going to be talking about is to ask the question, is Tom Brady washed? Now, the reason we are asking this question is the game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs ended with the Kansas City Chiefs winning 41-31. Now, Tom Brady losing this game pretty badly. The score doesn't say what the game actually looked like throughout, early in the game. Obviously, it looks like it's just a 10-point loss, but Tom Brady just early on they just struggled to find their footing, and it just didn't look like they had momentum and consistency throughout the entire game. It was just hard for them to find their footing offensively. But despite that, and a lot of people saying, should Tom Brady have come back this season, he still threw 39 of 52 for 385 yards and 3 touchdowns. So to answer the question in a short and sweet manner, no, Tom Brady is not washed. He's still accurate. He's still throwing the ball with zip. He's still dissecting defenses. He's still throwing an amazing game right now. It's just that he is not like of before when he was in New England, where he could carry a team. And he's never really been that kind of player. You do need to have playmakers around him, especially now, of guys who can get open on their own, where he can throw to them accurately and for them to make plays after the catch. And especially he needs a great defense, which he does have in the Buccaneers. Unfortunately, they did give up 41 points this game. But to end off this topic and this episode relatively shortly, is Tom Brady washed? No, not really. Stop asking that question. Should he have come back this season? Yes, he's still playing really, really well. He's probably still one top 10 quarterback in this league. I'm not going to make the full list right now, but just off of my head, he's probably up there. If not top 10, he's definitely top 15. I don't know who you be taking over him. That's like 14 players or like 10, 12 players over Tom Brady right now. But Tom Brady's still doing his thing. Despite them being 2-2 and having a pretty bad loss this past week, I think they're going to be able to bounce back. Mike Evans is back now, obviously. He had like 102 yards this game, and they're going to have a pretty easy game next week against the Atlanta Falcons. So we'll really be able to see, hopefully, Cole Beasley, who they had to pick up because of injuries, and then other guys like Coley Jones, and the other like Russell Gage and the other receivers that they have to really understand and see what Brady is seeing on the field. Yeah, without further ado, I'd just like to end this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. We are on Google Podcasts now, as I mentioned last episode. But starting in episode 5 now, we're actually going to be uploading clips after the fact. So go check those out as well. They're going to be short clips of the podcast itself. So check that out on YouTube as well. Without any more further ado, thank you so much for watching. Stay positive, stay motivated. Thank you so much, and peace.